Alright, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a pretty fascinating and honestly completely unique approach to understanding one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. We're going to use the architectural rules of crafting a perfect YouTube script, specifically those guidelines from vidIQ, to navigate the incredibly dense 2,500-year history of Iran. I know, it sounds kind of crazy at first, but you'll see just how perfectly this framework maps onto the rise, fall, and rebirth of the Iranian nation. Let's get right into it.
So, rule number 1, grab attention in the first 5 seconds. To start any great narrative, we need a massive hook. And historically speaking, there is literally no hook more undeniable than the foundation of the Achaemenid Empire around 550 BCE by Cyrus the Great. Here's a guy who emerged from a nomadic tribe and just rapidly conquered surrounding kingdoms to build the absolute largest empire the ancient world had ever seen up to that point.
And Cyrus's approach brilliantly illustrates our hook. Crafted in 539 BCE after he captured Babylon, the Cyrus cylinder is widely hailed today as the world's first Bill of Human Rights. You see, instead of crushing the people he conquered, Cyrus utilized a strategy of religious tolerance and cultural respect that was so profound, he actually allowed deported peoples to return to their homelands. His policies were so visionary that a copy of this exact clay cylinder sits in the United Nations headquarters today. With our hook firmly established, we're going to use a simple 4-part structure to map out the rest of this vast narrative. First up, the hook in ancient Persia. Second, the main content of the Golden Ages. Third, plot twists during the Great Game. And finally, active voice in modern revolutions. Moving right into part 2, main content, empires and polymaths. This is where we explore Iran's middle history. Tracing the timeline from the ancient Achaemenids all the way down to the 20th century Pahlavis, you start to realize the real story isn't just about who happened to be sitting on the throne at any given time. It's a story of incredible, stubborn survival. Persian identity survived the fall of its ancient empires to Alexander the Great. It survived the arrival of Islam in the 7th century, and it even weathered the devastating invasions by Mongol tribes in the Middle Ages. Through all of that chaos, the Iranian cultural fabric held remarkably strong. And that cultural fabric was woven by brilliant minds whose influence literally spanned the globe. You've got Avicenna, whose Canon of Medicine was the definitive medical textbook in Europe for 600 years. Then there's Al-Khwarizmi, who invented algorithms. And yes, we can definitely blame him for making us all do algebra. You have Ferdowsi, whose epic poem, the Shahnameh, essentially saved the Persian language. And of course, Omar Khayyam, who gave us beautiful poetry and designed a calendar that's actually more precise than the Gregorian one we use today. Now, the crucial pivot point in this era, the moment the script truly tightens up, is the year 1501. This is when the Safavid dynasty did something pretty incredible. After centuries of fragmentation, they reunified Iran as an independent state. But even more importantly, they established Twelver Shia Islam as the official state religion. This was a massive turning point, guys. It cemented Iran's modern religious identity and completely shaped its geopolitical standing for centuries to come. Every good script needs conflict to keep us hooked, right? Well, moving into the Qajar dynasty era in the late 18th and 19th centuries, we get a major plot twist. The nation encounters the heavy, disruptive hand of European imperialism. This brings us to what's known as the Great Game. This was an intense 19th century geopolitical struggle, where the British and Russian empires were just constantly battling for dominance across Central Asia. You can basically think of the British and Russian empires during this time as overly aggressive co-writers, desperately trying to hijack Iran's script for their own strategic and financial gains. They were treating the entire nation like a giant chessboard. This geopolitical game resulted in some seriously painful plot twists and extreme economic strain. The Qajar dynasty lost massive chunks of territory in the Caucasus to Russia through the treaties of Gulistan in 1813 and Turkmenchai in 1828. And then, get this, in 1891, the Shah granted a complete monopoly on tobacco production to a British company. Well, that sparked massive nationwide protests. These foreign concessions had fundamentally undermined Iran's sovereignty, and the population was, understandably, deeply angry. So all this intense foreign pressure and internal dissatisfaction finally boils over, culminating in the 1906 Constitutional Revolution. The Iranian people had just had enough of absolute monarchy and foreign meddling. This revolution forced the establishment of the Majlis, or parliament, aiming to put a check on the absolute power of the Shah. It was a huge step toward giving the people a real voice in their own story. Which leads us perfectly into our next section and the next vidIQ scripting rule: use active voice, modern revolutions. What's really interesting about applying this active voice rule to history is how perfectly it describes the Iranian populace completely taking charge in the 20th century. There's this massive grammatical shift. Passive voice. Iran was exploited by foreign oil interests. That's the 19th century script. But the 20th century script shifts to active voice.
The Iranian people launched the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Shifting from passive victimhood to active determination really reflects the populace boldly rebelling against both foreign interference and domestic autocracy. Impartially observing the mid-20th century, it became a rapid-fire sequence of massive upheaval. In 1951, Prime Minister Mossadegh nationalized the oil industry. By 1953, he was ousted in a CIA and British-backed coup. Tensions continued to simmer right up until 1979, when the Islamic Revolution swept the nation, which was quickly followed by the grueling 8-year Iran-Iraq War beginning in 1980. Talk about a roller coaster. Ultimately, the 20th century was defined by a very stark contrast. On one hand, you had the Pahlavi dynasty, Reza Shah, and later his son Mohammad Reza, pushing for rapid, secular, Western-aligned modernization and building up a massive military force. But on the other hand, in 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini led the overthrow of that exact monarchy, establishing a theocratic republic based on the guardianship of the jurist, which is essentially rule by Islamic legal scholars. We're looking at two entirely different visions for the country's script, resulting in a completely reshaped geopolitical landscape. Finally, we've reached the end screen phase of our explainer, the call to action and modern legacy. A script's end screen always looks to the future, right? So let's look at where Iran stands on the global stage today. Now, in the 21st century, Iran remains a major, highly complex player in a really volatile region. They're a significant global oil producer while actively navigating incredibly complex international sanctions and economic pressures. But beyond all the geopolitics we see in the news, the country is driven by a young, highly dynamic population, and they are the direct inheritors of that deeply resilient cultural heritage we talked about earlier. From the profound religious tolerance of the Cyrus cylinder thousands of years ago, to the complex, active voice of its modern revolutions, Iran's history is fundamentally a story of profound survival and endurance. It leaves us to wonder, and this is what you should really take away from our explainer today, how will a civilization that has survived millennia of conquests, intense plot twists, and changing empires script